Okay, so this is the demo for the Potato Heads Intro to Photoshop assignment. In this exercise, you'll use Photoshop to create 2 potato or onions or eggs head figures, assembling their features from provided set of images, and use them to create a realistic or use stylistic choice to look as though these pieces belong together and merge them. This exercise is going to help you use your selection tools. It's going to show you how to use layers or organize elements in an image. We're going to learn how to apply transformations and apply color to selections. We're going to copy and paste or drag and drop, and we're going to learn how to copy, rotate, and scale these shapes. This project is due before the next class begins. You're going to submit 2 potatoes with 1 image and a background of your choosing. If you want some examples, here are some at the bottom. When you are ready to start, go ahead and click the next button, go to Potato Head Instructions, and download potatohead.1.tiff. You'll see that populate in your auto bar, and you should be able to get started from there. Open up your Photoshop app, and you're going to go to New File. What you want to do is you want to make sure your dimensions match what is listed within the document. We're going to need 11 by 8.5. Make sure it's landscape. Maybe you've already got one that's ready to go. Just flip it to fit what you need. Make sure that background is transparent. And you should be good to go. Okay. I'm going to sort of arrange this a little bit for us to make it a little easier. Before I get crazy, I'm going to maximize this screen. I'm going to open up that file that I just downloaded, that Fred Potato Head. And it should auto-pop in another tab. Here are all your pieces. These are the pieces you're going to use. We've got 2 bodies, a bunch of little sticker-like things. So it looks like a sticker sheet you could use in person. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab at least one of these bodies. I'm using the magnetic lasso tool, and I'm just moving very slowly across the pivot points, and when I reach the end, I'm going to make sure I click and make a connection, and you'll see that I've got those marching ant lines around it. That means I can use the object. So I'm going to just pull it off and adjust my panels and drag and drop it over. And I'm going to minimize this because we'll come back to it. So now that I've got it here, I want to scale it up to fit within the photo frame. And maybe I'll make some adjustments. Alrighty. So now that I've got one, it's pretty easy to just grab the layer that I've got here. Whenever you need to make a new layer, or maybe you want to copy a layer, you can right-click on your layers panel here, or drop down there and that'll create a new layer as well. Go ahead and make a new layer and name this one Potato. I'm going to reorganize this later. So I've got Potato 1 there now. Keep in mind I'm going to readjust this here in just a minute. So I've got 1 potato, and I've pulled it off screen for just a minute because I'm just demonstrating that you can't like just drag it into the next layer. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to rename this current layer Potato 2. Alrighty, so now that I've got this one adjusted, I'm going to create one more layer. And I'm going to call this one background. That one's going to go all the way to the back, so I'm going to drag it down. Remember, the bottom layer on your layers panel is always going to be the very farthest piece that is away from you. Alrighty, so once again, readjusting. I am not going to go grab that second potato. I'm just going to create a copy. What I've done is made a duplicate layer of the layer I already have. Notice that it says Potato 2. In order to make sure that I do not mess these up, I'm going to go ahead and delete this Potato 1 layer and rename that first Potato 2 layer Potato 1. Alrighty. Great. So now I've got my two bodies and it's time to do the rest of our assembly. I'm going to grab one of these head shapes. We've got a potato, an onion, and an egg. I'm going to use the most logical tool, which is that elliptical marquee. It's already the right shape. So this is an egg. It's kind of oblong. It's not exactly perfect. So when I'm ready to create it, I don't have to hold down the shift key. If I was going to grab that onion because I need a perfect circle, I would use the shift key to grab it. Now, with this marquee tool, it's very important to remember that when you are not quite done, do not grab any other tools because that marquee will fully lock onto anything that's behind it. So I'm just readjusting my egg shape to get as much of the general egg ready. Then I'm going to jump over here and click that move tool and that'll select the area. Now, notice I'm stretching it here. I want you to watch what happens when I go to try to readjust. Notice that when I stretch, and I've still got this second window open, I'm going to go and close that previous window or minimize it. And you'll notice that whatever changes I make with the second window open, whenever I scoot back over, all those changes will undo themselves. But just to create some consistency here, I'm going to go ahead and grab the other object. I'm going to grab this potato. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can always sort of adjust or edit what we need to when we get to the meat of it. So all this work I'm doing it so I can show you that you've got to make sure you've got only one window open at a time when you want to do these big edits. Luckily, it's sort of locked on properly, but normally what would happen is those would just revert back to that smaller size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rename these layers egg and potato head, so that way I know what's what. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to arrange them on the layers panel so that way that egg will be in front of the neck of that body instead of behind it. So once again, I'm going to adjust, and now it's time to zoom in. If you'll see on the side of my potato, I've got a little bit of accidentally took some of that yellow background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and erase that out. What I've got right now is just a regular eraser tool. And since I'm using a transparent background and I'm only working on the potato layer, I don't have to worry about it taking away from that body because the body's on a different layer. I'm only erasing on a single layer. So whenever you use that eraser tool, make sure that you've got the layer you want to erase selected. Otherwise, whatever you click is not going to take. Okay, so now it's time to find the rest of the face pieces. I'm going to make a few selections and use the appropriate moving tools. I'm going to grab this lasso tool. I'm going to grab one of these ears. And I don't really care if it's perfect. That's really not my priority here. What I want is just an approximation because I want this to kind of look a little funny. And I'm going to drag that over. And notice, I resize it. Put it in place. I'm going to minimize that window. And it is still locking, so it's working right now. But you'll see later in the video that it's going to revert back to what it was. I'm going to go ahead and grab a second ear. It's the same ear that I have. I'm going to resize it, get it to the approximate size of the other one. On this ear, I need to just reverse because I just want to use the same ears and I want to flip it and make sure it's going to look the same. So I'm going to go down to Edit, Transform, and go to Flip Horizontal. That's going to flip it over that x-axis and it's not going to make it switch directions. Transform, flip horizontal. There you go. There I go. There I go. There I go. So I'm going to just double check and make sure everything looks okay. Then I'm going to jump back over and I'm going to rename this right ear and do the same for left ear. That's so if I need to go back and make specific adjustments or resize things or move things, I know exactly which one I'm grabbing. This is not so important with smaller documents like this, but if I'm working on a larger scale and I've got a lot of pieces, what's going to happen I could potentially mess up errors. So just like before, I'm going to make sure I have the right layer selected, and I'm going to grab that eraser tool and take off any of that yellow background, just so I have a nice kind of wholesome feeling ear. Do it to the right. All right, time to grab other pieces. I am thinking about a mouth, and I think I'm going to grab this sort of lipstick yelling mouth, or maybe they're singing. It looks like it's kind of bold and vibrant. They're talking. I feel like it's pretty animated, so that's why I'm going to grab this one. All right. So I'm going to make some adjustments so that I can make these lips look like they live on this potato, or they are part of the potato. Um, so I need to make sure that when I do this sort of thing, that these pieces are going to mirror each other. So I'm going to show you a few wrong ways to do it, and then I'll show you the right way. So what I'm trying to do is trying to take a space that I sampled from the potato and paint it on the layer that has the mouth. Now notice that I'm doing it, it's kind of blending in, but what's happening is I'm getting a border around that. So every time I try to do it, it's still recognizing that this is a separate entity. If I want to make something look like it is absolutely together, I want to probably merge these layers, because you'll see you can even still see the outline, and it's even grabbing some of the purple from the lipstick and pulling it out because it's not exactly sure what it's sampling. So I Control Z'd and I undid everything, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack this right next to each other, and I'm going to highlight each layer, and then I'm going to drop down and merge. That's going to make these two a single unit. So those lips now live in place. And what I'm able to do now is use that healing brush to make a connection. I'm going to use Control or Alt, or Command or Alt, and sample some of the potato skin. And I'm just going to go in and clean it up and make it look like that mouth fully is integrated into that potato. But notice right here, this what I'm showing you is when you sample, it's going to take a sample from wherever you grab it. So if you grab it from the edge, it'll take that edge into consideration, and if you paint in broad strokes, it's going to remember where that edge is supposed to be, and it'll paint the edge of your piece onto your thing. So let's grab the next piece. I'm going to grab some hair. And what I'm using is going to actually be the magic wand tool or the object selection tool. If you've got pieces that are fairly similar, you can use this one and hold down Shift and just click around until you get what you need. Now make sure you've got your other pieces deselected, because if you'll notice I grabbed the mouth. What I'm going to use is just this little piece of hair. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to collect these pieces. And it was a little simpler because I didn't have to click around and hope that the magnetic lasso was going to grab exactly what I wanted it to grab. Now this is a great tool, but sometimes it's not exactly perfect, so it may miss pieces. And now notice when I clicked out, it resized it, right? Sometimes that does happen. So what I'm doing now is I'm reorganizing my layers so that way I can make sure that that hair is going to be in front of those ears. And I'm going to resize it to about the right size. And I'll probably adjust this again here in a little bit. I think that's a good policy to follow until you're completely happy. Just keep readjusting your pieces as you need it, because what might work now may not work later, and you always want to make sure that your piece is going to be good for the most part. All right, so what I'm doing is warping. I want to adjust that hair and give myself a little more flowy freedom. I want to make it a little longer. Well, that warp tool is going to allow me to pull at the corner points and angles of the hair piece that we've got right here. And I just want to make it look a little more long, a little less poofy. And then I'm going to readjust those ears to fit back in. All right, time to grab some eyes. I like these goofy looking ones with the glasses. It makes me feel like this potato's going to be a nerd. I'm just going to double check and make sure I like the height of it. Notice it went back down to the regular size. I'm going to readjust and place those where I need them to be, and voila, eyes. Now, it's a big rectangle, and that doesn't necessarily read as integrated into the potato. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this potato and make it look fairly together. And the tool I'm using is the background eraser. Now, here's just a quick demo with it at a small height. I can basically grab anything and erase through, and what's going to happen is it's going to look as though I have just erased tiny bits. So I'm going to take away some of this flesh and clean it up so that way it looks pretty seamless, or seamless-ish. Notice the one downside of the background eraser tool is that it still recognizes hard edges. So when I'm done erasing all this fine detail, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back with the irregular eraser and take off those hard edges. And just very carefully grab all that. Beautiful. Looking good. All right, cool. So let's grab these, move them down. Now, I still want to make this look a little bit tidier. So what I'm going to do is, just like with the lips, I'm going to merge the eyes with the potato. And that'll help me use some of these photo editing tools. So I'm going to grab the smudge tool. And I'm going to just pull the edges of this down so that they feel a little bit more concentrated and together and tidy, or at least a little more one, like the pixels will blend together a little more smoothly. When I'm done with that, I'll hit it with a blur real fast, and that'll just soften any leftover hard edges. Alrighty, last but not least, we probably should grab a nose, right? Okay, let's scroll over to these noses and see what we've got. All right, we've got a bunch of noses, a couple different options. What I'm going to switch over to is the magnetic lasso, and I'm going to just hit those outlines. Now, another good tool that would be great for this, especially if you've got a designated shape like this, using the polygonal lasso instead and move on pivot points rather than those anchors. So that way you don't have to work as hard to get what you need. All right, just like before, I'm going to merge this nose with the potato so that way I can go in and smudge and clean up these bits and make it look like this nose is the potato. It is part. I'm going to just hit the edges real fast and adjust and clean it up, right? Give it a little bit of depth. Just like before, hit it with that blur so it's not quite as profoundly different. All right, it's time to do the second head, right? I think we'll do this one a little faster. That first head in the assignment needs to be fairly integrated. Like it needs to look like all of these potato pieces are a part of it. The second one, not so much. You're more than welcome to just like make these look like obvious stickers. So just like I said, another good tool to grab something that has a definite shape, like this triangle, is this polygonal lasso. And make sure you grab like corner to corner. Boom. Simple as that. Go ahead and grab it. Let's pull it over. Resize it. Oh, it saw the wrong section, so let's drag it up on top of the egg. So that way it's at the front. We may have to do this in stages. Sometimes if your piece is all the way up, you might have to stop a little bit and jump as you need to. Okay. There we go. That's a really big nose. And I'm okay with that. I want this one to be extra goofy looking. So we're going to go and we're going to scroll out. I'm going to grab this zoom tool and make this less large so I can look at the other pieces. All right, so I'm going to grab the magic wand. And I'm thinking about eyebrows, maybe. Do I want these eyebrows? So notice I'm grabbing these and they aren't moving. It's taking the full sticker sheet. So that means I have the full sticker sheet selected and maybe I'm not quite on the right layer. This will happen occasionally, so just make sure you're working on the right layer and you've got the selection tool on the right spot. I've changed my mind. I want to grab this mustache. So I've got it. And I'm going to just blow it up a little bit because I think a big mustache is going to really just make this piece. Once I'm done editing, I'll hit enter and that'll lock it in place. All right, so let's grab some other things. I'm going to use this quick selection tool. And I'm thinking about a mouth. I'm thinking maybe this guy right here. And I'm just going to circle and highlight that rectangle. And I'm going to drag that over just like that. And while I have that mouth, I'm going to go ahead and resize it. I think a very sort of like tiny mouth, tight-lipped tiny mouth. Once I'm happy with it, I'll hit enter. And then I'll go grab something else. What am I thinking? Eyes? What kind of eyes? I think these sort of like slightly scared eyes will be good. It's an oval shape, so I'm just going to use the elliptical marquee and drag it over. Gorgeous. I'm going to make these extra big. All right, cool. So I've got this and I want to just use the same eye. So I'm going to duplicate that layer. And what's going to happen is it's going to basically copy and paste onto a new layer. But if I want it to be flipped, what am I going to do? I'm going to flip it horizontal. So that way it looks like two real eyes. Because if I left it the other way, the corners wouldn't be going the right direction. Grab that. Let's give him some eyebrows, maybe. I'm going to switch my selection tool over. And I'm going to go for that object selection. So I'm going to click. And it clicked wrong. I'm going to click again. Oh, that's not the right tool, is it? So let's switch over to Magic Wand. That's going to grab all the pixels that are about the same color. So if I click and hold down Shift and click a little more, it'll allow me to grab these eyebrows and pull them over. So I got some eyebrows. They're kind of like angry eyebrows, and I don't know if that's exactly the mood I'm going for. So if I bring my arrow over to the corner of a piece, you'll notice I get a bent arrow. That's going to allow me to rotate these pieces into the direction I want them to sit at. So I'm going to make him a little concerned. All right, let's grab him some hair. Who is he? As a hairstyle, what is good? So let's grab that magic wand tool again. I think he's going to have this long curly hair. Let's pull that over just like before. And resize. Now I'm going to pull this farther back because I want it to sit behind those eyes and that mustache. I don't want it to cover those pieces. All right, let's resize. And readjust and put that in place. All right, and just like before, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Warp, and I'm going to move the edges of this hair to fit a little better with my shape. I'm not super worried about it being too big or too small because the point of this is to look a little silly. All right, that looks good, I think. All right, when I'm happy with it, I've got all these pieces. Now it's time to throw that background in. So let's unlock that piece by clicking that lock. And we're going to go out to the internet, right? So where should our guy live? Let's go find a good picture, right? I think I'm going to put him in a Chili's. So when we go and look for images, we always want to make sure our image is a good size and it's got a lot of pixels in it and it's got a good resolution. I need like a restaurant background. I want these people to be going to Chili's. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to right click and do File, Save As. I'll name it Chili's and I'll put it in my graphic design folder over here. That way I can easily find it when I'm ready to use it. All right, so let's jump back to our picture. And I am going to zoom out, make sure my magnifying glass is selected, and then I'll pull in and out. All right, open up. Let's find that picture we just got. Remember, it's in the graphic design folder. Let's look for Chili's. There it is, right there. Open. It's going to create a new file. So just like that sticker sheet, let's pull it aside, grab our selection tool. It's going to ask us to convert it to a normal layer. That's okay. Go ahead and click yes. Let's close that out. All right, cool. So let's resize it to fit. Now, your image may not always fit the background picture you've got. That's okay. As long as it reads correctly, like you can kind of see the people fit into space. It doesn't matter if you use the whole picture or not. Use what you need. So I've adjusted them to look like they're getting ready for a nice dinner at a Chili's. I'm going to click Save a Copy, and I'm going to name this one last name _ potato heads. And I'm going to save the first file as a PSD, a Photoshop file. So that way when I go back to maybe if I want to go back and edit it, it's still good. I can still touch it. Go ahead and click OK on that. All right, click File. And you can also click Save As and do the exact same thing as what I did. And you would just do your last name _ potato heads, and it would get you a .psd file. Same picture, all good. But there are two ways to do this. But if you want to save it as a different file type, like a JPEG, which is what we're going to need to turn it in, go ahead and do the Save a Copy, and make sure you've got JPEG selected under that file type. And you're going to do your last name _ potato head, just like before. Alrighty, and what that's going to do is it's going to merge all your layers. If you look over here on the right, you'll notice all those pieces are gone when you save it as a JPEG. So that is a flat image now. If you're all finished, go ahead and go back to Canvas, go to the Potato Heads assignment, and it'll give you the option to upload. So what you're going to do is you're just going to upload that JPEG. Hold on to that Photoshop file. We'll turn those in at the end of the semester. And there you go.